Hello and welcome back to Texas Nation. Once again, I'm Grant Levinson. I'm sitting here with Devin Walker and Aaron Wolf. Guys, how y'all doing today?
Doing good.
Doing good.
Y'all ready to talk a little football?
Absolutely.
Let's do it.
Okay, let's jump right into NCAA football. For the first time in over 3 decades, the Texas Longhorns, the USC Trojans, and the Penn State Nittany Lions are out of the top 25. Devin, do you see this as a overturning of powerhouses in college football?
Absolutely. I think college football, it kind of goes in a cycle. It's cyclical. So I feel like, Miami, they've kind of gone through a down period, and now they're kind of starting to come back up, and now they're back in the top 25. So I feel like that's going to happen with a lot of these teams here.
Aaron?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it definitely is a cycle. They will be coming back up. We've had a lot of players get traded to the NFL, especially good quarterbacks from these powerhouses.
Right.
And so once these players turn in, they'll be back on top. It's important for these smaller school teams to get their scouting going really strong.
Yeah,
right now.
they definitely need to pick up on the recruiting because, when you lose players like Colt McCoy or Vince Young, it's hard to keep winning games, And Texas had 162 straight weeks of being ranked in the top 25, which was the longest active streak, and that's over 10 years. But I want to go to a team who seems to be on the rise. They've always kind of been in the background, never really been to a BCS bowl game except for last year, and now they're finally starting to make their push up, and that's the Oregon Ducks. They, folks, are looking like the real deal. With Deron Thomas and LaMichael James, I don't see a better backfield out there. Now, Devin, do you think that they can really go all the way and maybe jump Ohio State? Or do you think if Ohio State, Alabama, and Oregon are all undefeated at the end of the season, do you see them getting left out?
Well, first off, I think the Oregon Ducks, offensively they can play with any team in the country. I think they could, even with Alabama's great defense, I feel like they could score on them as well. The thing about Oregon is what they need to do is as long as their defense steps up and plays, they gave up 30 points in their last 2 games. They gave up 30 points to Stanford and their game previous to that. I think the key for the Oregon Ducks is really going to be their defense, stepping up. And as long as they do that, I really feel like they can play for the national title this year.
Well, up until that Stanford game, they had the number 2 defense overall. They ranked number 2 in interceptions. But, Aaron, do you see them with, like, the running back LaMichael James, who's second in the NCAA in rushing, only behind Denard Robinson? Do you see them being able to ride his coattails all the way to either a BCS win or a BCS national championship win?
They definitely have the opportunity and the personnel to do it. Their offensive line is letting their game really shine on the offensive side. But the defensive end is what I'm really worried about, especially the secondary. They just let Stanford kind of have just some wide open passes and catches. That really worries me against real good teams, which they might be in a BCS bowl like Boise or something like that. So
well, before they even get there, they still have 4 very tough games left on their schedule. They play at USC, against Washington, at Arizona, and then against Oregon State. Devin, do you see any of those teams coming out of the woodwork and beating Oregon?
Actually, I feel like if any team's going to do that, I think it's going to be the Oregon State Beavers because, just with their quarterback and their running back and their wide receiver, their whole offense really has been clicking, and they've been able to score over 30 points on other top 5 teams, Boise State, Boise State, and TCU. So, I feel like if anybody's going to beat the Oregon Ducks, it's going to be Oregon State.
Well, Jaquiz Rogers and James Rogers both, are just going off right now, running the ball and then catching it. Now, Aaron, do you see any of those teams beating Oregon?
Earlier, I thought I was really comfortable with Washington, but now I've kind of switched. I think Oregon State rivalry games are just you just don't know what's going to happen.
Right.
They're really hard to plan, and they're hard to get used to. So we'll see.
They're very hard to get used to. And what else is hard to get used to is seeing Michigan being back atop the leaderboards. Like they're 5-0 and they're ranked number 17. So it's going to be really interesting to see how they do. Now they still have to play Michigan State this weekend, Iowa, Wisconsin, and Ohio State. Those teams are going to be very tough tests, but Denard Shoelace Robinson seems to be the best player on the field every time he walks on. He's got over 900 rushing yards, which puts him first in the NCAA, and he's got the number 3 quarterback rating in the NCAA. Aaron, do you see Denard being able to carry this Michigan Wolverine team all the way to a national championship?
Of course, he's definitely got the potential. The only thing I'm worried about is one of those rushing touchdowns turning into an injury, getting smacked like Michael Vick did in the NFL. Something along the lines of that. So if he stays healthy, yeah, he's going to be able to take Michigan where they need to go.
Well, he does have 8 rushing touchdowns, and then he's got 7 passing touchdowns. Do you think that he's evenly putting the ball around, do you think that his ability to run and pass scares a lot of the defenses?
Yeah, I think it does, and I think it should because he's he's among the top 5 in passing efficiency, and also he's the leading rusher in the country. So I feel like any team that makes the entire Michigan offense better because they're going to have to respect him with his legs running the ball and with his arm passing it. He can do both of them just as well.
And furthermore, when that happens, when you have a quarterback like that, the defense has to put 8 guys in the box.
Right.
This makes it very easy for him to get one-on-one coverage on the receivers and bring out his quarterback abilities. So I think you're right. Defenses are going to have trouble with him.
Okay. Now, before we go into NFL, I want to get your last little thoughts on who do you see going to play in the Fiesta Bowl for the national championship this year? I mean, Alabama and Ohio State are still looking strong as ever, but do you see anybody maybe like a dark horse sneaking up and catching everyone?
I don't know if you could call him a dark horse, but I definitely feel like Alabama's going to be in that national title game, and I think the other team that's going to come up and play them is going to be TCU. I definitely like their quarterback, Andy Dalton. He's a very efficient guy. Jeremy Curley's a really explosive return man. I mean, every time that he gets the ball, you're going to have to watch out for him. And I think that their defense, Gary Patterson, what he does over there, he just knows how to run a defense.
Yeah, he does. Their defense has been fantastic, and they've had great defensive ends in the past who can just run into the backfield and tackle whoever they want to. Now, Arn, who do you see coming out for the national championship game?
Definitely, I think Alabama really looks like they've got a head on their shoulders compared to the rest of the league. I do like your pick as well, but I think Alabama might take it all the way, even in the national game. So at that point, TCU, whoever it is going to get taken.
All right, well, let's switch gears now and talk some NFL. And the big headline this week was Randy Moss gets traded from the New England Patriots to Minnesota for a 3rd-round pick. I can't remember the last time a big name and such a great talent like that got traded for anything lower than a 1st-round pick. Devin, do you think that the Vikings got the steal in this draft?
I feel like the Vikings definitely got the steal, in this particular
Or in this trade, excuse me.
Right,
yeah.
in this particular trade. I think what the Patriots were trying to do is, since they didn't feel like they were going to give Randy Moss the money that he wanted at the age that he's at now, I think they felt like instead of letting him go into free agency, they would just get what they could. And so, a 3rd-round pick is what they got. And the Patriots have a lot of picks in this upcoming draft just from the trades that they've made. And but I think the Vikings definitely, for the player that they've gotten, and you have to think Sidney Rice is coming back. Right. With those two on the outside, I think a 3rd-round pick that was nothing for them.
Right. Well, the Patriots do have 2 picks in the 1st, 2nd, 3rd, and 4th rounds in this upcoming draft. So it definitely did help them, and it just gives them more players to choose from. But Arn, do you see that them having to choose from those players, being youngsters and unproven, it really kind of hurts them when you're trading away someone such a great talent like Randy Moss?
No, I don't. One reason is because we know that the Patriots are in sort of a reconstruction area, even though they have Tom Brady and they still are playing very well. But let's face it. I mean, the Vikings had the power in the negotiation, because if that would have came out, then now you have the Patriots with a player that publicly doesn't want to play there, and so to speak, and then all of a sudden you get nothing for him. So you get, like you said, you get what you can get, and then I think adding another trade to what they already have the upcoming draft is great.
Well, Randy Moss said, "Get your '84 jerseys out and get ready for a show." He told everyone to go into their closet and grab their old jersey. So, do you see Randy Moss having such an extreme impact to where the Vikings now become the favorite in the NFC?
Yeah, I do. I think the Patriots are ludicrous for letting him go. I mean, Wes Welker and him together were a great match, and it's going to be the same thing. It's just like we were talking about earlier with the Michigan quarterback. They're going to have to respect that. You have to respect the long ball. So that opens up the underneath. Opens up the tight end. Go ahead.
Devin, what do you think?
I absolutely think that, and I think part of why you've seen Wes Welker be able to play so well is because Randy Moss has been able to take double coverage, and then Wes Welker's been able to run underneath routes. Yeah. And I think the same thing is going to happen here with Percy Harvin. They're going to have you have to respect Randy Moss going deep, and so Percy Harvin's going to be able to come underneath and
play that slot,
slot position, and make a lot of plays.
All right. Well, speaking of someone who's been making a lot of plays, Michael Vick has been making a lot of plays for the Philadelphia Eagles, but he's out. He's out with a rib injury, and we don't know how long he's going to be out for, maybe a week, maybe 2 weeks. But how do you see this going about? Andy Reid says that Kevin Kolb's going to be the starting quarterback at the beginning of the season. Then he gets hurt, so Michael Vick has to come in. Then he says, okay, even though Vick did well, Kevin Kolb is still going to be our quarterback. Then he changes his mind and says Vic's going to be the quarterback. Then Vic gets hurt, and then Kevin Kolb's the quarterback. I said quarterback about 5 times, and there was about 5 or 6 changes. Are the the Eagles just in disarray because it seems like they can't hold on to a leader? Aaron?
Well, I mean, let's be honest here. This is a classic case of karma here. Because you flip-flopped on the quarterbacks originally, now you're forced to flip-flop on them because of injury.
Right.
Basically, the idea is that you might have a good winning record, but you're not going to win a championship with a two-headed monster in the quarterback. We've seen many teams try that, and it just doesn't work. A two-headed running back, yes, but two-headed running back quarterback, I don't see them going too far.
Devin, do you see this impacting the Eagles?
Not really. I feel like now with Michael Vick, I feel like since he's been able to play so well, and Kevin Kolb has not really looked spectacular, other than 2 games in the last season where he came up in backup duty for McNabb. Kevin Kolb hasn't really been able to make much of an impact. Of course, I know he went out in the first game with a concussion, but I really feel like as well as Michael Vick's been playing, as long as the injury is not affecting him when he comes back, and we don't know yet. It might be a week, it might be 2 weeks, but I feel like the Eagles are really ready to move forward with Vick right now.
Well, speaking of moving forward, the Giants are coming off a 2-2 start, and the Houston Texans are coming off a 3-1 start. The Texans are really looking like the team to beat in the AFC as of right now. They have just a fantastic blend of pass and run with Arian Foster, who came in the second quarter last game and still was able to rack up 131 yards in just 3 quarters. And then you have Matt Schaub and Andre Johnson, who might still be out for this game. We don't know yet. But the Giants were able to get 9 sacks and beat the Bears in Chicago. And many people thought that after the Bears, the way they have played, were the favorite in the NFC. So how do you see this week's matchup breaking down, Aaron?
I like Houston in this one. Andre has been practicing, so I think we will see him on the field. And he's the reason Foster's having his day. It's once again Randy Moss situation. You have to respect Johnson. I mean, the guy is incredible. So because of that, a lot of times you don't have 7 guys, 6 guys in the box, and Foster can run for days with that. Any running back can.
Right. Devin, what do you think?
I actually like the Texans as well. I feel like the Texans, with the leading rusher in the NFL, and the fact that the Bears tend to beat themselves. You know, they have Jay Cutler. You know, he makes a lot of mistakes.
Right.
And so I think that helped the Giants out a lot, obviously, because of the interceptions that he threw.
Well, but the big factor was those 9 sacks. Do you think those are his fault for just holding on to the ball too long, or do you think his offensive line was to blame?
I think some of them were definitely. Him holding on to the ball too long. And then I think another part of it is the Giants just have a really talented defensive line.
They do have a very talented defensive line. I want to switch now to another team in the state of Texas, the Dallas Cowboys. This weekend they'll be taking on Tennessee Titans and Chris Johnson. Now, Chris Johnson has only amassed just over 300 yards, which, you say just over 300 yards, wow, that's a lot. Not for Chris Johnson, who's trying to get 2,500 yards. He's only had 100 yards rushing game twice. The other 2, he was below 60 yards rushing. He just got stopped for 53 yards against Denver. Denver? I mean, they're a joke of a team. So do you see Chris Johnson being able to run on this Dallas defense? Devin, go ahead.
I think Chris Johnson can. I really think it all comes down to the offensive line play and how well Dallas decides to play. Because I think if you look at Dallas in their early games, they against the run, they didn't look spectacular really. So I really feel like it depends on how well Dallas plays. And I think if Chris Johnson as a whole, he can run past anyone.
Well, speaking of running, the Cowboys finally ran the ball and they won. Aaron, do you see them going with that same strategy in this game?
I would like to. That's what they're going to need to do. I mean, you have to establish a running game if you want to be successful in the NFL, I believe. So we'll see. As long as we get some good defense going with keeping Chris Johnson. And I think Vince Young's going to flee the pocket a lot because of DeMarcus Ware. So that's going to be something interesting to keep an eye on, I think. And, I think a good, strong running game will get the Cowboys in a good position towards the end of the game.
It will be a great game. But now it's